The Varkish Empire had conquered hundreds of worlds. They believed war was a simple game. Overpower the weak, demand surrender, and take what they wanted. They had fought countless species, all predictable, all desperate to survive. But today, everything changed. Commander Xelfar stood inside the massive bridge of the warship Dominance. His red eyes glowed under the dim blue lights, his dark scales reflecting the confidence of a Varkish who had never known defeat. Earth was just another planet to crush, another species to enslave. "Commander, the fleet is in position," reported his second-in-command, Officer Greskel. "We are waiting for your order." Xelfar glanced at the planet below, a blue-green world, beautiful in its simplicity. These primitive creatures, these humans, had no idea what was coming. "Open a transmission," he said with a smirk. The screen flickered, showing the human leader, a man with short, dark hair and piercing brown eyes. His uniform was simple, but his posture was firm. "This is General Ethan Carter of Earth's Defense Command," the human said, his voice calm. "We know why you're here. Leave now, and we will not pursue war." Xelfar let out a low chuckle. "War? You speak as if your kind has a chance. I give you one opportunity. Surrender your planet, and you will be integrated into the Empire. Resist, and we will erase your existence." There was silence. Carter did not flinch. Then he leaned forward slightly. "Commander Xelfar, I think you made a mistake." Xelfar laughed. "Oh, and what mistake is that?" Carter's expression did not change. "You think we're like the others." The transmission cut off. Xelfar's amusement faded. "Foolish creatures, begin the attack." The Varkish warships moved into position, their plasma cannons charging. Bright energy beams rained down toward Earth's surface. Cities would fall, resistance would crumble, just as it always did. But then something unexpected happened. The moment the first plasma bolts hit, counterfire erupted from the planet below. Missiles and railgun rounds soared into space at terrifying speed, striking with pinpoint accuracy. One Varkish cruiser exploded instantly. Another was crippled in seconds. Xelfar's smirk vanished. "What is this?" he roared. "Sir, the humans, they have advanced weaponry. They're targeting our weak points." Greskel's voice trembled. They're not fighting like any species we've seen before." Xelfar watched in horror as human fighter jets weaved between the towering Varkish dreadnoughts, dodging plasma blasts with impossible agility. They weren't retreating. They were attacking. On the ground, human soldiers moved in perfect coordination, setting traps, using guerrilla tactics that the Varkish had no way to predict. In one sector, an entire battalion of Varkish warriors marched into what seemed like an abandoned city. Seconds later, explosions ripped through the streets. Snipers picked off officers with terrifying accuracy. Shadowy figures moved in the smoke, striking fast and vanishing just as quickly. The battalion was wiped out. Xelfar's claws clenched. Impossible. These primitives. A message came through. A surviving Varkish soldier appeared on the screen, his breathing heavy, his armor covered in human blood. His hands shook. His eyes were wide with something Xelfar had never seen in his people before. "Fear." "Commander," the soldier gasped. "They don't fight to survive. They fight to win." The transmission cut. Alarms blared across the bridge. More Varkish ships exploded as human warships emerged from the dark side of the moon. They had been waiting. Xelfar took a step back. For the first time in his life, he realized he was not the predator. He was the prey. The Varkish had never known true fear, until now. Commander Xelfar stood motionless on the bridge of Dominance, watching in horror as the battle unfolded. His war fleet, one of the strongest in the Empire, was being torn apart by a species they had dismissed as primitive. Every attempt to establish a foothold on Earth had failed. Varkish warriors reported ambushes from unseen enemies, entire squads vanishing into the night. Every street, every ruined building seemed to be a trap. Their shields were useless against human artillery, and their advanced armor meant nothing when a sniper's bullet found the gaps. "Commander, we've lost the Warborn and Screaming Talon." Officer Greskel's voice trembled as more red lights flashed across the control panels. "The humans, they're not just defending. They're hunting us." Zelfar's claws dug into the armrest of his command chair. "This is unacceptable. They should be broken by now." But the humans weren't breaking. They were adapting. On the ground, the Varkish attempted to regroup in a heavily fortified position outside the ruins of a major human city. Thousands of warriors dug in, waiting for the inevitable counterattack. Their orders were clear: hold the position until reinforcements arrived. The attack never came. Hours passed, then days. The humans did not charge recklessly, did not throw themselves against superior firepower. Instead, they waited. Then, one by one, Varkish patrols started disappearing. A scouting unit sent to secure supplies vanished without a trace. Their bodies were found later, stripped of weapons, their throats slit in silence. A squad of Varkish officers, trying to establish communication with the fleet, heard something in the night. Low, eerie sounds. Not growls, not mechanical noises. Laughter. The next morning, every officer in that squad was found dead. A single message was carved into the metal wall of their bunker. "You are not safe." Back in orbit, Zelfar realized something terrifying. His forces were losing not just a battle, but a psychological war. The Varkish had always relied on brute strength. They crushed enemies with overwhelming numbers and firepower. But humans fought with something else. Ruthlessness, cunning, patience, and worst of all, a terrifying willingness to go beyond simple survival. Zelfar reviewed intercepted human transmissions, trying to understand his enemy. What he saw made his blood run cold. Human soldiers laughed as they prepared for battle. They cracked jokes in the middle of firefights. They talked about what they would do after the war. Plans, dreams, things no soldier should be thinking about in the heat of battle. One audio clip from a captured human squad leader haunted him the most. "We don't fight just to live. We fight because they dared to take what's ours, and we don't stop until we win." Zelfar finally understood. Humans weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for revenge. The battlefield was silent, not the kind of silence that came with peace, but the kind that signaled something terrible was about to happen. Zelfar watched from the bridge of dominance, his claws gripping the armrest of his command chair so tightly that the metal bent beneath his strength. Reports had been flooding in for days. Varkish forces disappearing, squads found mutilated, patrols refusing to leave their camps. It was chaos. The humans did not fight like any species the Varkish had conquered before. Most civilizations broke after losing a major city, after seeing their armies crushed, after knowing they had no chance to win. But humans did not break. They became something else. On the surface, the Varkish had fortified their last remaining stronghold, a massive command center built into the ruins of a human city. Reinforcements were supposed to arrive, but none had come. Every ship sent to orbit Earth had vanished. The humans had technology far inferior to the Varkish Empire, and yet they had found a way to cripple their warships. No one knew how. Inside the command bunker, General Kavor paced back and forth, his tail lashing in frustration. "We have the most advanced weapons in the galaxy. How are they still standing?" He slammed a fist against the metal table, causing the officers around him to flinch. A young officer, his scales dull from exhaustion, swallowed before speaking. "Sir, the humans, they are not fighting to win a battle. They are fighting to end us." Kavor growled. "Explain." The officer hesitated before pulling up intercepted human transmissions. The recordings played through the room, the alien voices strange, but their meaning clear. "They think this is a war. We'll show them a massacre. No survivors, no prisoners. Not after what they did to our people." They don't deserve mercy. Cavor felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. Varkish warriors were built for war, trained from birth to conquer and expand the Empire's reach. But humans had been pushed too far. Their world was burning, their cities turned to dust, their people slaughtered. And instead of surrendering, they had chosen vengeance. The first attack came in the dead of night. Explosions rocked the perimeter, tearing through defenses with terrifying precision. Snipers picked off Varkish officers with deadly accuracy, their bullets piercing armor as if it were nothing. Then the power went out. The command center was plunged into darkness. The screams started soon after. Varkish warriors were dragged into the shadows, their bodies never found. Some were left behind, their throats slit, a single message written in their own blood. This is your last night. By morning, half the stronghold was lost. The remaining forces were trapped, unable to call for help. And then the humans came. Not in overwhelming numbers, not in a reckless charge. They came in silence, moving like shadows, picking off the Varkish one by one. It was not a battle. It was a hunt. Cavor stood in the command room, his breathing ragged, his mind racing. His claws trembled as he gripped the edge of the table, his gaze fixed on the holo display before him. The stronghold's defenses were failing. The human attacks had started small, isolated strikes, ambushes in the dead of night. But now, the full horror of their assault was unfolding. The Varkish were not facing soldiers. They were facing something far worse. The outer defenses had been wiped out. Security turrets had been hacked, turned against their own operators. Patrols sent out to investigate had simply vanished, their last transmissions filled with panic before being cut off. The few bodies recovered were mutilated beyond recognition, their armor torn apart, as if it were paper. The worst part was the silence. The humans were ghosts, shadows in the darkness, striking without warning and disappearing before any retaliation could be made. Cavor turned to his officers. "Tell me someone has a plan." He snarled, his fangs bared. The officers exchanged glances, but none spoke. They were warriors, trained in strategy and combat, but nothing had prepared them for this. Every tactic they tried had failed. The humans did not fight like an organized military force. They fought with a single, terrifying purpose: to kill without mercy. Gelfar, the fleet commander, finally spoke. "Sir, we must evacuate. This war is lost." Cavor's tail lashed violently. "We are the Varkish Empire. We do not run from prey." Zelfar met his glare. "They are not prey." A deep guttural roar echoed through the bunker. One of their warriors, screaming in agony from somewhere in the halls. The sound sent shivers down their spines. Cavor grabbed his rifle and stormed out of the room, his officers scrambling to follow. He would not hide behind metal walls while his soldiers were slaughtered. He would face these creatures and remind them who they were fighting. The corridors were dimly lit, the emergency lights flickering. The scent of blood was thick in the air. Cavor's boots crushed broken debris as he stepped forward, his claws wrapped tightly around his weapon. His warriors lined the halls, their weapons raised, their eyes darting around in paranoia. No one spoke. Then the lights went out completely. Darkness swallowed them, and the only sounds were the ragged breaths of terrified warriors. Cavor activated his night vision. The hallway was empty, but something was wrong. His eyes narrowed as he focused on the nearest warrior. The soldier's head twitched, his breathing shallow. Cavor moved closer. The soldier's throat had been slit. He was already dead, standing upright, his body held in place by something unseen in the shadows. Cavor barely had time to react before a blade tore through another warrior's chest. A burst of gunfire erupted, lighting up the darkness in flashes, but the humans were never where the shots landed. One by one, his warriors fell. Some were dragged into vents. Others were pulled into the darkness with muffled screams, their weapons clattering to the ground. Cavor fired wildly, his shots finding nothing but empty air. Then he saw them. Not just soldiers, civilians, humans who should have been afraid, who should have fled. But their eyes burned with something the Varkish had never seen before. Rage. Pure, unrelenting rage. A human woman lunged at a warrior twice her size, stabbing a blade through his throat. A man covered in dirt and blood fired a stolen rifle with terrifying accuracy. Even children joined the slaughter, their eyes void of innocence. The Varkish had underestimated them. They had thought the humans were weak. Now, they knew the truth. Humans did not fight for survival. They fought for vengeance. And they would not stop until the Varkish were nothing but a memory. Cavor ran. His heart pounded against his ribs, his breath coming in sharp gasps as he sprinted down the blood-soaked corridor. The screams of his soldiers had faded, replaced by eerie silence. The Varkish warlord had fought countless battles, survived wars that had torn entire planets apart, but he had never known true fear until now. The humans were not just warriors. They were something else, something primal. They did not fight with strategy or honor. They hunted. They stalked the Varkish through the shadows, moving unseen, striking with terrifying precision. Entire squads had disappeared in moments, their bodies left behind as a warning. He had tried to rally his forces, had shouted orders through the comms. Fall back, regroup, fight. But no one answered. The bunker was deathly quiet. Cavor turned a corner and nearly tripped over a body. He stopped, panting, staring down at one of his officers, Selfar. The fleet commander's armor was covered in claw marks, his throat slashed open. His eyes were still wide, frozen in terror. His weapon lay useless at his side, his claws still gripping it tightly. Cavor swallowed hard and stepped over the body. He had to escape. The exit was close. If he could reach the hangar bay, there was still a chance. He had a personal transport hidden among the fleet's warships, a last resort for emergencies. If he could reach it, he could warn the High Council. He could tell them what had happened here, tell them that this was not a war. This was extermination. A low growl echoed through the hallway. Cavor froze. The sound did not come from a Varkish. Slowly, he turned his head. A human stood at the end of the corridor. It was a woman, her face smeared with dirt and blood. Her clothes were torn, her arm wrapped in a makeshift bandage. She was breathing heavily, her chest rising and falling. Cavor raised his rifle, his claws tightening around the trigger. The woman didn't move. She stared at him with dark, empty eyes. Eyes that had seen too much. Eyes that held nothing but hatred. Cavor hesitated. He had seen that look before, on the faces of his own warriors, the ones who had lost everything, the ones who had nothing left but vengeance. The woman took a step forward. Cavor fired. The shot should have been perfect. He had trained for years, had fought in wars, had taken down warriors twice her size. There was no way he could miss. But she wasn't there anymore. She moved faster than he had thought possible. One moment she was standing still, the next she was gone. A hand grabbed his wrist. Pain exploded in his arm as something sharp tore through his flesh. His rifle clattered to the ground. He snarled and swung his other claw, but the human ducked. Her fist connected with his ribs, cracking the armor. Cavor staggered back, his vision blurring. He reached for his backup weapon, a plasma blade strapped to his hip. Too slow. The human lunged again, and the world tilted. Pain shot through his leg, and he collapsed onto one knee. His claws trembled as he tried to push himself up. A blade pressed against his throat. Cavor stared up at the woman. She did not speak. She did not gloat. She did not hesitate. The blade sliced across his throat. As the darkness took him, Cavor finally understood. The humans did not fight for survival. They fought for something far more terrifying. They fought for those they had lost. And they would not stop until the Varkish were nothing but ghosts. The bridge of the Varkish warship was silent. Not the calm, controlled silence of a crew awaiting orders, but the kind that came when death was near. The crew members sat frozen, their eyes locked on the massive view screen. Outside, the battlefield was a graveyard. Varkish warships burned, their shattered hulls drifting through the void. Bodies floated among the wreckage, the remains of what was once the most feared fleet in the sector. The battle should have been simple. The Varkish Empire had crushed 100 worlds before, had enslaved entire civilizations. They had seen human resistance before, weak, desperate, and easy to break. But this was different. Captain Sorvek clutched the edges of his command chair, his claws digging into the metal. His breathing was slow, controlled, but the fear was still there, crawling beneath his skin like an infection. He had never seen anything like this before. "Status report," he said, forcing his voice to remain steady. One of his officers turned, his eyes wide, his scales paler than they should have been. "Sir, we've lost the 7th Fleet. The enemy, the humans, they used our own ships against us. They boarded them, took control, and turned them on our forces." Sorvek's claws tightened. How? The Varkish were masters of war. Their ships were secured with the strongest defenses, their crews trained for every possible scenario. No species had ever taken control of their warships before. But the humans had. "How many of our ships remain?" The officer hesitated. "Speak." Sorvek snapped. The officer swallowed. "Less than 30, Captain. We started with over 300. Sorvek's throat tightened. This wasn't possible. This was madness. The humans had come with barely a fraction of their numbers, with ships that were outdated, weaker. And yet, they had turned this war into a massacre. A voice crackled through the comms. A human voice. "Varkish warship, this is Commander Ryan Graves of the Terran Fleet. You have one chance to surrender. Drop your weapons, power down your engines, and prepare to be boarded. If you resist, you will be eliminated." The words were spoken without arrogance, without cruelty. Just a simple fact. Sorvek's claws trembled. Surrender. The Varkish did not surrender. They fought. They conquered. They were the predators, not the prey. But now, as he looked at the shattered remains of his fleet, he felt something deep in his chest. A cold, suffocating truth. They had underestimated the humans. They had believed humans fought for survival, for resources, for land. They had been wrong. The humans did not fight for survival. They fought for vengeance. They fought for those who had been taken from them, for the worlds the Varkish had burned, for the families that had been lost. And they would not stop. Sorvek exhaled shakily. He turned to his crew. "Open a channel." The officer hesitated. "Sir." Sorvek closed his eyes. The Varkish had ruled the stars for centuries. They had never known fear. Now, for the first time, they did. And for the first time, they understood. "Open the channel," he repeated. "Tell them, we surrender." The transmission echoed through the remains of the Varkish fleet, spreading like wildfire. Surrender. A word never spoken by their kind before. The unthinkable had happened. The mighty conquerors had bowed before a species they once called weak. But the war was not over. Not yet. On the bridge of the Terran flagship Retribution, Commander Ryan Graves stood motionless, his hands clasped behind his back as he stared at the wreckage outside. Flames flickered in the void, illuminating the remains of countless Varkish warships. They had won the battle. But something was wrong. A single message had been sent to the Terran fleet, an encrypted signal, one that bypassed all defenses and appeared directly on Graves' screen. The words were chilling. "We surrender, but we are not your true enemy. They are coming." The air on the bridge grew thick with unease. Officers exchanged glances, whispering among themselves. "What does it mean?" One of them asked. "Who is coming?" Graves didn't answer. He was thinking, piecing together the puzzle. The Varkish had never feared anyone. If they were surrendering, if they were warning humanity, then whatever was coming was far worse than them. A new voice broke through the silence, one that sent a chill down his spine. "Human Commander, rasped a voice over the comms. It was deep, guttural, laced with pain. "Captain Sorvek, you do not understand what you have done. We never fought you to win. We fought to delay you." Graves narrowed his eyes. "Explain." There was a pause, a long silence filled with the distant hum of dying warships. "The war we fought with you, it was not by choice." Sorvek continued. "We did not seek to destroy your kind. We were forced into this war by something far greater than us, greater than you." Graves clenched his jaw. "You're telling me your empire wasn't behind the invasion of our worlds? That the slaughter of billions was not your doing?" A heavy breath. "We killed because we were ordered to," Sorvek admitted, "because refusal meant extinction. But you were not supposed to survive. You were not supposed to fight back. And now, because of you, because of this war, they are coming." The bridge fell into stunned silence. Graves exhaled slowly, his mind racing. "If this is a trick—" "It is not," Sorvek cut in. "You think you have won, human. But in truth, you have doomed us all. We were a shield, a wall between you and them. And now that shield is broken." A warning klaxon blared across the bridge. "Commander," a voice shouted, "we've got something inbound. No, multiple signatures. Jump readings off the charts." Graves turned sharply to the tactical display. The screen flared to life. Dozens of red markers appeared. Then hundreds. Then thousands. A massive fleet was emerging from the void, warships of a design never seen before. They were monstrous, hulking things, bristling with weapons far beyond human understanding. Some looked organic, like living nightmares wrapped in steel. Others pulsed with energy that bent the space around them. The universe itself seemed to tremble. And then, a voice. Not over the comms, not through the speakers, but in their minds. "We have waited long enough." The bridge shuddered. The stars themselves seemed to twist and darken. "You killed our pawns. Now, you face us." Graves felt something cold coil around his spine. His breath came in short gasps. He had faced war. He had seen death. But never in all his years had he felt true fear. Until now. This was not just a war. This was the beginning of the end.